on merit and fitness in the event there's a recommendation to employ a family member of the superintendent. So that is an addition in blue on pages 5 and 6. Previously, family members of school board members could not be employed and family members of superintendents could not be employed. That was a change to the Virginia Code. Now, as long as there's a certification that either the school board member who is related to the potential employee was not involved in the recommendation for hiring or the hiring decision, or that the superintendent was not involved in the hiring decision, those individuals could be hired by the school board if the school board so desired. So I'd say that's the biggest change to this policy from our policy 2.9, but happy to answer any questions that you have about this model policy BBFA. Yes.
So there seems to be overlap between the old 8.3 and this.
The old 8.3, sorry.
The GCCB or whatever.
For the employment of family members, yes.
So do we have to say this, is there some way to say it once instead of just? Say something once, why say it again?
Right.
Talking heads.
We'll go back and look at that. Can we
Yeah.
go back and look at that? Instead of making that decision here?
Yeah,
Take that back as
no,
feedback?
I don't, that's just a suggestion if
Yeah.
there's a way to
Okay.
say it once.
All right,
Say it once.
we'll take it back as some feedback to take a look at.
Just a note on what Mr. Castillo said. I would, well, I think it's always good to say something once. If the repetition of language is in the model policies,
It
I'd
is.
suggest leaning towards sticking with the model policies, because as we can see in going through this activity, the more we can stick with the model languages, the more we can rely on the work done by the VSBA, rather than trying to repeat things, and our policies will stay more up to date. So that's a great comment, but one that we might want to, if we want to stick with the model policies, pass on to the VSBA.
We'll take that feedback as well.
And sort of going along the earlier comment on GCCB, the same thing applies. There's a lot of places in this model policy where there's he, again, used in places where non-gendered language would seem to be more appropriate. So if the rest of the board is okay with that, I'd like to suggest that we go through that as a scrub.
Does that sound good? Great. Thank you. Anything else on policy BBFA? All right, that's it for first reading.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to 8.04, which is approval, oh, sorry, no, we won't. We will go back and approve first reading of policies. Would someone please move to do that? Mr. Webb?
Madam Chair, I move that the school board approve for first reading of policies GCCB, employment of family members, EFB, food services, BBFA, conflict of interest and disclosure of economic interest.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Liddon. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Now we'll move on to 8.04, approval of second reading and adoption of policies. Ms. Minson.
Great, thank you. Two policies for second reading this evening. The first is policy GDI, support staff assignments and transfers. As was shared during first reading, this is a new policy, so it does not replace a current policy. There are no proposed changes were offered or suggested by the board before, so don't know if there are any questions. I do just want to point out the cross-references here don't have any reference to the prior policies because we have adopted, or the board has adopted, all of these policies. So that was a big moment when we didn't have to cross-reference the previous policies. So that felt really good. I know we have a ways to go, but that was a high moment in my week. Any questions on policy GDI, support staff assignments and transfers? Hearing none. The second policy for second reading is policy G.
I feel obligated to give you another high point in your week and say, I actually have no comments.
Thank you. Policy GDG, support staff probationary period. There were no changes to this, and this is also a policy that was not previously part of our policies, but was part of the, what was something that I think was assumed, so it makes sense to put in writing. And again, for this, there's no cross-references to policies that haven't been adopted. Any questions on policy GDG, support staff probationary period? Great.
All right, well, with that, would someone please move to approve second reading adoption of the policies just discussed?
I move that the school board approve second reading and adoption of policies GDI, support staff assignments and transfers, and GDG, support staff probationary period.
Thank you, Ms. Liddon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed or abstained? Great. Next up is 9.01, our future agenda items. Does anyone have any future agenda items? I know Dr. Noonan has a lot of items already on the agenda for our next few meetings. If you
We're always open to taking more, but we
If
do
there
have
are
a
more
full plate right now,
suggestions,
for
yeah.
sure.
We take them? No? Mr. Reidinger?
So I have, I think these are in work, but there's several I'd like to raise. One is, I think we're already looking at the work session on future demographic changes that are happening in the city and our projections. And I just wanted to reemphasize that, you know, with the increasing adjustments in the populations that we have and the changes in growth in our own projections, that I think that's important. I think this is probably on as well, but I think we needed a work session on standards-based grading and a fairly deep discussion.
That'll be on Tuesday of next week.
The one that I think is new that I'd suggest is, I sent an email around to the board a while ago, but there is perhaps I see this because of my day-to-day job, but there's an absolute run of ransomware attacks on school systems around the country. I mean, it's within the last day, there's 3 or 4 of them, and schools are getting delayed or being shut down by being infected with ransomware. The school board spent a fair amount of time on the subject the year before I was elected, but I don't think during the time I've been on it, we've spent very much on that issue. And it feels to me like, since it can be an existential moment that can actually have a school system shut down, that we ought to go back and review our protections and cybersecurity policies in that space. It would require a closed session, I'm sure. But that seems to me something that we ought to turn our attention to rather than, I mean, I think the point that brought it most home for me was when I think it was Louisiana declared a state of emergency because so many school systems in the state had been shut down. So I just think that's an important topic we ought to talk about. Thank you.
Other items? Yes, Mr. Castillo?
Yeah, I'd echo what Mr. Reidinger had said. I've asked repeatedly to touch on that thus far with a moderate amount of success. Also, student privacy issues. I think, you know, some of our providers and what they do with our students' data, I think should be something that we understand and acknowledge and address if necessary. I would also say, especially with, I think we're up to 6 deaths now after vaping involving questionable substances, and the fact that the FDA today called out Juul for actually marketing to schools. And if you, I just, my understanding from a physician in the family is the nicotine involved in Juuling is about 4 times what you get from smoking, as well as the fact that Juul aggressively touts that it's much cheaper to Juul than it is to smoke cigarettes. I think this is a very clear and present danger to our population in the school system, especially in the high school. I think it's extremely difficult to police, but I think we need to have a handle on this, understand what we're facing, and figure out what, if anything, we can do about it. And work with the general government, with the vendor population in the city, to the extent we can do that as well.
Justin, just to tack on that, that's actually a topic that the Health and Wellness Committee has taken a very serious interest in and has at least one, I guess they're actually in the process of planning a series of community talks on that. And so I invite you, you might want to touch base with Sue Dimmick or come to the next Health and Wellness Committee if you wanted to get more information about what they're doing, because I think that they're the feet on the ground, so to speak, in terms of being able to mobilize efforts and, community outreach. And so I think that, from a school board standpoint, obviously we can express our concern, but in terms of the action, I think it's nice to have the Health and Wellness Committee there and willing to move forward with different activities to increase the awareness and express concern.
Yeah, thanks for that, and I will definitely try to do that. But I think we may even want to work in parallel with the committee and take the most aggressive actions we can at the high school, for example.
Great. So we'll add those. Next up is our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for those topics. We do have a number of things that are coming up in the work sessions that are fairly meaty, but certainly not as emergent as some of the things that were brought up today. So maybe there's a way that we can weave some of it all together as well. So let us take a look at the calendar and schedule. Just a couple of things. Obviously, we're open, which is huge for us. We're really excited. As I mentioned in our back-to-school report at the beginning, very successful few days. We've worked out a number of the logistical hiccups. We continue to modify bus runs. Even a new bus run for Bus O will start on Thursday. So if anybody has children that are on Bus O in the afternoon and the morning, know that your bus information came out this afternoon about some changes there. We also are working on, the routines of school. One of the things that we know is that, for example, cafeteria lines at the beginning of the year are always long, but they do thin out over time. Kids understand the routines. They remember their numbers to put in when they get in, and things get better, and we appreciate everybody's patience around those. Just a quick shout out for Parent University. We have a really great resource for parents that's on the web, and we want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. Parent University brings together a number of events and resources that are available to all of the parents in all 5 of our schools. It's in one place so that parents don't have to search for a number of things in different places depending on where their children are. For example, the calendar is in there, and the calendar and course catalog help parents of pre-K-12 students understand what's happening in schools for students of all ages and abilities. It includes information about programs available to our parents here and in Arlington and in Fairfax as well as a resource. So in addition to that, there's also links to all of the school newsletters for each of the schools that can help keep you up to date there as well. From the FCCPS website, if you navigate from there to For Parents, you'll see a link for Parent University on the next page, and that is where you enter the Parent University portal. So we're very excited to continue to populate that with some interesting and timely information for our parents. This Saturday, as was mentioned earlier by Mr. Boson, as part of the Welcoming Falls Church project or work that's going on here in the city, we will be hosting the Behold the Dreamers and Bolo Mbui book conversation at 9 o'clock in the morning at George Mason High School. Hoping all of you will try and make it by. I'll have about 2 minutes to say hello to everybody, and I'm really going to try hard to keep it to 2 minutes. And so looking forward to hosting Mbolo Mbui for that author chat. But in addition to that, following the book conversation and some book signing and meeting and greeting people, there will be a smaller session with our teachers from Mary Ellen Henderson and George Mason in the Media Center, where we'll serve lunch, and the author will meet with us, and we'll also talk about curriculum connections and how it sort of supports our work around a caring community and climate. They will be there, and then Mbui will move on to the Falls Church Fall Festival. in the afternoon, and then on to Pivot Hills Library at 2 o'clock, and that should be a lot of fun. That's actually where she gained a lot of her inspiration for